This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good Erev Shabbos, Rabbi Glatstein, Shalom Aleichem. Good to see everybody. First, I want to share with you some thoughts on the Parsha, Parshas Boy. Rashi tells us that when it came to Makas B'chayros, first Hashem struck down the Bechar Behema. So Rashi says, why did Hashem strike down Bechar Behema? Says Rashi, when Hashem punishes the nations of the world, He first punishes their God. So this made me think of something, I think it's an interesting idea. We encounter this often. That's why the Nile was struck first, because they worshipped the Nile. Uvechol Elohei Mitzrayim E'aseh Shvatim. The idea that before Hashem attacks the nation, He first destroys their idol. In fact, we find that Rashi at the end of Parsha Shlach tells us that the reason why Parshas, the reason why Tzitzis has 8 strings is because it took them 8 days from the time they left Egypt until they sang Shira. So Maral asks, what's Rashi talking about? 8 days? They sang Shira on the 7th day. How did it take 8 days? So Maral says that from the fall of Mitzrayim, it was 8 days, because Mitzrayim fell Erev Pesach when God destroyed their gods. So this idea that before Hashem destroys a nation, He first destroys their God. The thing is, nowadays we don't have Avodah Zarah. However, many Svarim it brings, most notably in the Sefer Igrois HaKodesh, which is in the back of the Sefer Noam Elimelech, that even though the Anshe Knesset Agdola were not Mevatal Yetzer Hara, however, they transferred it to the desire for money. In other words, they didn't abolish the Yetzer Hara completely, they just moved it to money. So nowadays, money is Mamish Avodah Zarah. Nowadays, money is Mamish Avodah Zarah. So it comes out that how would Hashem operate nowadays if Hashem was, so to speak, bringing retribution? The first thing that would occur would be the economy goes down the tubes. The first thing that would happen would be a downward spiral in the economy. So, extrapolating from the procedure of Hashem is nifra me'aleikeha tchila. So nowadays that would play out. Hashem first punishes on the by inflicting the economy. Okay, next idea. In Parak Yud Aleph, Pasuk Ches, the Pasuk says, V'chol ha'am asher b'raglecha, and your whole people that are by your foot. So Rashi is troubled. What do you mean, the people that are by Paro's feet? What, Paro had a nation that lived by his feet? So Rashi says it means the nation that follows your advice and your walking. In other words, it means you and all the people that follow your advice. But it just struck me that the way to say people who follow your advice, Rashi says those who follow your counsel and your walking. Why is that the way to say someone who follows advice, someone who follows your path or your hiluch? I think we see an important idea that to give advice to other people, it's really only effective and people only follow it if they see that this is not like something, this is what he thought of, or this is his idea, but this is his derech. In other words, people learn more from your personal example. Your eitzah will be received, your eitzah will be adhered to, your eitzah will be followed. If it's not just an idea you thought of, but it's your derech, it's your hiluch, then people will follow it. Okay. This past week, a friend of mine, Rav Shlomo Margarefta, asked me, we said over from the Meshech Chachma recently, that when Hashem appeared to Yaakov Avinu b'maros halayla in the nighttime, that was very unusual. God usually appears to a Navi only in the daytime. So the Meshech Chachma explained, after God already established a relationship with Avram and Yitzchak, B'yoyim, So then God was able to speak to Yaakov Balayla. An example of that, the Meshech Chochmah says, is once Hashem speaks to a Navi in Eretz Yisrael, he could continue to speak to them in Chutz La'aretz. That's a general approach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So my friend Rosh Margarefta asked, but by the Bris Bein HaBesarim it says, Vayhi Hashemesh Lavai V'sardema Nafla Al Avram. That implies that God spoke to Avram Balayla, doesn't it? Vayhi Hashemesh Lavai. So actually it struck me, Rashi in this week's Parsha deals with a similar issue. That on the Pasuk HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, it says that Hashem showed Moshe Rabbeinu Levana B'chidusha. Hashem showed Moshe Rabbeinu the moon in its renewal. Rashi's bothered, you can't see the moon during the day. So Rashi says, Samuch l'shkias hachama. Moreover, Rashi's bothered, God never spoke to Moshe in the nighttime. So Rashi answers, you're right, God only spoke to Moshe in the day. It was right before the Shkia. And right before the Shkia, when it was a little bit dark, he showed him the moon. So maybe you could say the same thing with the Bris Bein HaBesarim. It doesn't actually say it was nighttime. It says, Vayhi Hashemesh Lavai. The sun was Lavai, to come. In other words, it didn't actually set, but it was sort of approaching the time to set. And you could say that the Bris Bein HaBesarim also was close to the Shkia, but not Mamish in the nighttime. Okay, if you look in the Haggadah Shel Pesach, we find that we have a stanza in the Haggadah, Yachal Merosh Chodesh Talmud Lomer B'Yom Hahu. By the way, Rav Aaron Cutler says, when do you ever start preparing for Yom Tov 2 weeks before? It should say Yachal Mipurim. I would think you start Shloshim Yom Kaidem Achag. So Rav Aaron Cutler proves from there that the Haggadah was written by Rav Shimon Gamliel, who says you start preparing for a Yom Tov 2 weeks before. But Rashi says, on the words Dabru El Kol Adas Yisrael, that Dabru Hayoim B'Rosh Chodesh, tell them today on Rosh Chodesh that they should take the sheep on the 10th of the month. So what do we see from here? That the command to separate the Pesach was on Rosh Chodesh. Moshe was commanded, speak to them on Rosh Chodesh and let them know to separate the animal on the 10th. So maybe this is the basis for what we say in the Haggadah, Yachal Me Rosh Chodesh, because that was really the beginning of the Tzivoy, of the Karban Pesach, was on Rosh Chodesh. Okay. Then another idea. Rashi says on the words Mishchu u'kechu lachem, draw and take. So Rashi says, if you have a sheep in your flock, use that sheep. Otherwise, if you don't, buy one from the marketplace. Min hashuk. So I was just troubled. Why dafka, if I have a sheep? Why do I have to use that sheep? Why can't I like that sheep. He's a nice sheep. He says, bah, he has nice wool. I want to make a sweater, so I'll go buy a sheep. What's the inyan that if I have a sheep, I should dafka use that sheep, and if I don't have a sheep, only then I could buy? Furthermore, this looks like it's unedited. I got to fix this up. But it should say V'gama Shapiresh. It doesn't work with what Rashi said earlier. Mishchu kachu. Pull your hand away from Avodah Zarah and take a sheep for the mitzvah. That's a different drasha. It's like a stira. First, Rashi on the spot says, Mishchu, if you have a sheep, use that, and if you don't, buy one from the store. But Rashi earlier said, Mishchu, draw forth, retreat your hand from Avodah Zarah, and take a sheep for the mitzvah. I mean, that's a different drasha. Mishchu kachu, remove yourself from Avodah Zarah, wean yourself off from Avodah Zarah. So I want to say like this. One answers the other. Chadam etaretzes chaverta. Namely, what's the reason why, if you have a sheep in your flock, you should dafka use that? Because if you have that sheep in your flock, there's a danger, you have it, maybe you had thoughts of Avodah Zarah, maybe you'll use it for Avodah Zarah, maybe an Egyptian considered Avodah Zarah. Because the purpose of the Karban Pesach is Mishchu Yedechem and Avodah Zarah K'chu Lachem LaMitzvah, therefore that dictates that if you have the sheep in your possession, use that sheep, don't keep that sheep in your possession and go buy a different one. That would sort of defeat the purpose of removing from Avodah Zarah. The sheep was the Avodah Zarah of the Mitzrim. Okay. Rashi brings an amazing idea. It says the Jewish people went and shechted the Pesach. And Rashi's bothered, but they didn't do it yet. So Rashi says, the famous principle, since they accepted upon themselves to do it, it's considered as if they did it. Which is a beautiful concept. When a person's makabel upon themselves to do something, Hashem reckons it as if they did it. But I was just thinking, why dafka do we find this concept over here in this juncture? That once Klal Yisrael accepted upon themselves to bring the Karban Pesach, it was considered as if they did it. So I want to say, the pasuk right before, Hashem told them, you're going to go into Eretz Yisrael, you're going to have children, you're going to be redeemed, and the pasuk says, Vayikoid ha'am vayishtachavu. They prostrated and they bowed. Rashi says, what did they thank Hashem for? For the report of redemption, entering Eretz Yisrael, and that they were going to have children. God told them they would be redeemed. They weren't redeemed yet. God told them they would go into Eretz Yisrael. They didn't go into Eretz Yisrael yet. God told them they would have children. They didn't have children yet. But they thanked Hashem as if it happened. So Hashem said, when I promise to do something, you thank me because you know that you could take it to the bank and in your mind it's as if it happened. I will midah keneged midah. When you're makabel to do something, I will respond in kind and consider it as if you did it. So it comes out maybe that this principle of kivan shekiblu aleya mal aleya makos kilu asu, it's not carte blanche. It depends if you sort of have the bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and you view HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that light, then Hashem will do the same for you. Okay. Or maybe you could say, as a reward for our bitachon and thanking Hashem, ki'ilu asu, so Hashem gave us, so to speak, the gift of ki'ilu misha kibal al atzmei mitzvah ki'ilu asisam. One more. This is mamish matanim min hashamayim. I'm working now on Haggadah in English. It's Bez Hashem, I have to submit it the end of next week. If anybody wants to be mishtatev, now would be a very good time. There's a famous kasha, the Brisker Rav. This is probably the most iconic question on the Seder. The question is, since there's a mitzvah to remember Yetzias Mitzrayim every single night of the year, L'man tizkor yom tzeitzcha me'eretz Mitzrayim kol yimei chayecha, what exactly is so unique and special about the night of the Seder? And it hit me that I think Rashi is saying a revolutionary meaning of the word vihigadata and the word Haggadah. If I were to ask you, what does Haggadah mean? Most people would say to speak, to say. No, that's not what the word means. Look at Rashi. Rashi says, V'hakasav melamdecha shetiftach layata b'divrei Haggadah hamoishchin es halev. Rashi says that we're talking about the she'eno yodea lishal, and we need to open up for him with words of Haggadah that draw the heart. I think we see a great thing from here. That Rashi is mefarish the word vihigadeta. It doesn't mean sipor. It means to draw. Hamshacha. Agadeta. That's moishech the leiv. The word vihigadeta means you need to draw. Where do we find examples of this? Good asik. Good agada. Good asik means you take the piece you have and you draw it up. Good achis. You take the piece you have, you draw it down. In other words, the mitzvah is not to say over the events of Yetzias Mitzrayim. The mitzvah is to engage and draw the hearts of your children. The mitzvah, vihigad Haggadah, is erroneously translated as to speak. Who says that? I would argue, Rashi. And I'll tell you, I saw this Rashi many, many times in my life, and I never realized what Rashi's saying. Rashi's saying the Haggadah, the Higadata, is to be moishech, to draw, to pull, to engage. If you say the story, but you're not pulling on the heartstrings of your children, you did not complete and fulfill the mitzvah. That's the inyan of Haggadah, the redefinition of Haggadah of Rashi, Rabban Shal Yisrael. Okay, Rabbi Glatstein, that's part one of today's shiur. Okay, we're going to
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.